Peter Newman, he is the director of the International Center for the Study of Radicalization at King's College in London. Can talk more to us about ISIS and who they really are.
And we're also joined by Lieutenant General Mark Hertling, and he can tell us about the military response thus far. General, to you first. We've heard over the recent weeks, we heard it from President Obama yesterday, no boots on the ground, no troops on the ground there in Iraq. But we heard from former British Defense Secretary Liam Fox in recent weeks that the U.S. and U.K. should not rule out anything in responding to ISIS. Is there a red line at which even you would say that most people who can make this decision would say, we now have to go in, there have to be troops in Iraq?
Well, I'm not going to be the political decision maker on this, Victor, but it is a great question. It is certainly a humanitarian crisis. I think the options that the president has laid out right now are the best right now. We're continuing to observe, assess, and he's decided a few things, and that cycle will repeat itself and will act. But I think the actions of the last few days has provided some relief to the Yazidis on top of Mount Sinjar, but it also has provided some ability for the Peshmerga, the Kurdish army in the north, to regain their balance and perhaps plan for ways forward in the very near future. But we can't do this for the Iraqi government. We cannot insert ourselves again. This is their sovereign territory, and they have asked us to leave, providing some help right now, and that's exactly what we're doing. So I think as the government understands that they have to care for all their people and they get the right political leaders in, there may be options in the future, but only time will tell.
Professor Newman, as you know, the general said, the Iraqis, and as the president said, the Iraqis have to take care of this politically themselves and try to quell some of that unrest. They obviously are unable to do it without U.S. or any other intervention. But how do you form a government amidst this kind of violence? How do you form a government in Iraq, as the president called for yesterday, that can be seen as legitimate if you don't have elections?
Well, there were elections in Iraq in April, and Prime Minister al-Maliki is technically now only the caretaker prime minister. And it's important to understand that part of the reason why ISIS is so popular and why ISIS is able to hold on to territory in the Sunni areas is not because ISIS is ISIS. It's because ISIS stands against the Shiites represented by Prime Minister al-Maliki, who has systematically disenfranchised the Sunnis. So ISIS is riding on the tailcoats of this anti-Shiite feeling in Iraq. So the clue and the key to achieving victory over ISIS is to really create an inclusive government in Iraq that is able to attract the Sunnis again, and that will loosen the alliance between the Sunnis and ISIS. It's so important right now that the focus is on that political aspect, because ultimately any military effort will not be able to fix that political discrepancy that has given rise to ISIS.
But how do you solidify that political regime amidst the violence that's there?
Yeah, it's very, very difficult, and really the American government has to bring all its influence and power to bear. It's very clear that even within al-Maliki's coalition, there are now cracks. Not everyone believes that he's a man of the future. And it would really be important as a symbol, but also in terms of substance, for a new person to take over, who can reset relationships with the Kurds and with the Sunnis and make a new start in Iraq, which is really what is necessary.
You know, General, Israel has faced international pushback because of the high number of civilian deaths, and they say it's because their enemy is fighting amidst densely populated areas. We know 1.8 million people living there in Gaza. Is the U.S. facing the same proposition with its fight it's taking against ISIS? I mean, are they as well fighting from these densely populated areas, or do we know that yet?
Well, there are certainly some densely populated areas in the north, Victor. There are 5 of the largest Iraqi cities are in the northern part where ISIS has gained control, 5 of the 9 largest cities. One of the things that I think is interesting is we keep coming back to the requirements for the United States, and as I heard one of your earlier reports talking about what is going to happen from Europe. I'd like to bring a third source in. Where are the Islamic leaders, the moderate Islamic leaders in this fight? This should not fall on the West to solve. And as the professor pointed out so ably there, this is a Islamic challenge, and we need the leadership in that part of the world too, because ISIS is a relatively small minority of people. It's less than 10% of this extremist population, which is an even further lesser percentage of the entire Islamic world. Islam is a very peaceful religion, and yet we don't see the Islamic leaders stepping up and saying, we've got to solve this problem and take care of our people. There are catastrophes going on. What can we do about this? And this is going on all over the Middle East, as you pointed out. It's the same issue going on in Gaza, between Hamas and Israel.
You know, Peter, I want to put that question to you, but it's something that we teased in the last hour. You've got, about 45 seconds here. Hopefully you can get them both in. My question is following up on something the president said on Thursday night, is that the U.S. can also lead through diplomacy and through economic strength. Help us understand that. Are there governments that have direct influence over ISIS, or is there another read of that suggestion from the president?
Well, I think diplomatically, it's very important for the U.S. to mobilize countries that are in the region and to some extent are threatened by ISIS. Countries like Jordan, for example, which is a very strong ally of America, but also countries with money. Countries in the Gulf, countries like Saudi, who clearly feel threatened by ISIS now, who may have supported, not the governments, but individuals within these countries, may have supported ISIS in the past, not realizing the monster that they now have created. And so it's important for these countries to really be very tough on some of the individuals within their countries giving money to ISIS and groups like that.
I actually think you answered both of those there. My question and the General's question there. Peter, thank you so much.
Yes, and General Mark Hertling, thank you to you as well. We appreciate you both, gentlemen.
Thank you.
The breaking news overnight, a top NASCAR driver now under investigation after running over a fellow driver on a dirt kart track. We've got all the details on the crash involving NASCAR's Tony Stewart. Also, there'd been more recent peace talks and hoping that they could end the bloodshed in Gaza. However, Hamas is now threatening an escalation in violence if they're